Hey y'all, welcome to my channel. I'm Amber and today I'm going to be doing a weekly wrap up. So we are trying to get into a new routine when it comes to my video making. So this week I will be going back to normal, reviewing the books that I've read or DNF'd and talking about what I'm currently reading. But I'm also going to be adding today what I've watched. So let's just get in first with what I've watched, since I shouldn't have as much to talk about when it comes to watching. I don't really been, or rather I should say I haven't really been watching TV shows. I've been all over the place when it comes to TV shows, so it's just one of the things where I don't want the anxiety of watching a new show and not what's going to happen to these characters, and then just not in the mood for any of the shows that I typically would rewatch when I'm not in the mood for a new show. So it's like a crazy situation. Call it the quarantine brain, whatever, but it is what it is. So what I would really like for a TV show is something that is not dramatic, anxiety rising type shows. Just something easy, not with crude humor or anything, just something that would be like a real easy show to watch. So if you have suggestions for that, anything that would be on Netflix, Hulu, or Amazon, I would love suggestions. So, movies, I've watched 5 things. Almost missed one movie this week that I watched, or throughout the whole month. So I'm just going to be, I don't know if I said this, but I will be just wrapping up everything that I've watched from the whole month in my last weekly wrap up of the month. So that's how it's going to be working, because I don't really watch a lot of movies. Not as much as I used to. So this month I rewatched 2 things, and technically you could say 3, but because I watched that one for the first time this month, I'm gonna like count it like half-wise, because I don't know if I want to count it as a rewatch, right, or not, because I watched it for the first time this month. So we'll get to that after. But the 2 things I rewatched is Beauty and the Beast with Emma Watson. This is like my 4th time rewatching this, I think. I think the animated film, I like the animated film, but I do think that there's a lot of major plot holes in it, and when I rewatched it since I was a kid, I really noticed it. So a lot of things in the animated film do not make sense. But what I really like about the live action one is that they give you background stories for the characters. The Beast isn't stupid. They could have given him an actual name. That's the thing I kind of wish they had, but they didn't, so that was a little bit disappointing. But at least he wasn't dumb, and that they actually, it was more realistic of like what society was at that time. The higher up you were on the social ladder, the more education you had, that kind of thing. The one thing that I know a lot of people had issues with, how they had the token gay character, and I agree with that. I don't think that that was really, either they shouldn't have done it, or they at all, or they shouldn't just have thrown it in like that. It's just, it doesn't feel right. So that was like the only like the problematic aspect I had with it, but I still really love it, mainly for Emma Watson. She's brilliant. I love her. And then the last real rewatch I had this month was The Lion King, the live action one, and it's kind of interesting because I did not really like this one when I watched it in theaters. Like, it was good, but it's like the same story, the same exact story in the animated film, just done in the live action. So I just felt like it was kind of like a repeater, and I didn't really see the point of it. I still don't see the point of it. Didn't need to be made if they weren't going to do anything different or add anything or whatever. The only thing I liked was how they changed the song that Timon and Pumbaa does, because like when they get to that one part and they're like, in the animated films, they're like, hey, Pumbaa, the kids, and then he's like, oh, sorry, but instead he doesn't say that, like, he just lets him go on. So I kind of like that part. But yeah, it's very repetitive, same. And I didn't really like the song that was it Beyonce that sings in that middle part. It wasn't really that good. So but I have started to like enjoy it a lot more as I watch it. I think it's just because it's an easy watch. you know? But yeah, it gets only 3 stars for me. And then the first thing that I watched for the first time is Hamilton. Nobody should be surprised that, because everybody and their mother has been watching this ever since it got out on Disney. I'm going to say something that might upset some people. I think that Broadway is exclusionary, and I absolutely do not care for it. I would never support Broadway at all, because the lower to middle class people would never be able to go watch a Broadway ever. And then they were able to somehow scrimp all the pennies in their pockets and all that. You know, just the ticket alone is super expensive. And then imagine that you have to get an airplane ticket, have to get a hotel ticket, have to buy food, because I don't think airports allow you to bring food on anymore. So I'm just like, it's exclusionary, it's for the richies, and I've really just never supported Broadway. But this was the exception. I was really upset when this first came out, because I really wanted to see this. Knew I couldn't. Again, it's that whole exclusionary aspect. So when Disney decided to bring it out, I was so happy. And all these people who are complaining about the fact that it's not the exact same thing as the Broadway show, I'm like, well, of course it isn't. It's not really like Broadway, because you're not actually there. We should be just grateful that we actually get to see it at all. Because again, Broadway is exclusionary and doesn't care about the average American. So, I absolutely loved it. The lyrics, the music, the acting, 100% amazing. Tears were shed at the end of this show. It was so good. Lin-Manuel Miranda is brilliant. I will watch anything that he does. You know, he's an automatic. If his name is on it, I will watch it. That's how good I think he was in this. He wrote all of the lyrics. He did all of that. Like, just blows my mind how on the talent with him. But anyways, it gets 5 stars. This is when I did do a rewatch, so I watched it twice in 1 month. I think I actually watched it pretty close to each other too. Like, I just watched it and then I went back and watched it again. So you can see how much I really enjoyed Hamilton. But yeah, this will probably be the only Broadway I ever watch. Even if by some miracle I was able to afford a Broadway, I would not support Broadway. But yeah, we're gonna stop harping on that and move on to the last 2 movies that I watched this month. The next one is Jumanji: The Next Level, and this is the second one with Dwayne Johnson, Kevin Hart. We added 2 new characters, starring Danny DeVito and I think Donald Glover. Yes, Donald Glover. And I love the chemistry between Kevin Hart and Dwayne Johnson and Danny DeVito and Donald Glover. Perfect. And yes, this is predictable. Let me just tell you, it is basically the same exact story of the first movie. But you cannot resist the humor, the comedy, and the chemistry of these characters. They all are so good together, and they just make a great, funny, fun adventure movie. And like, you kind of like forget the predictability because it's so fun to watch. So it's like, if you need an easy watch, something to like take your mind away from the horrible nonsense of this world right now, this is kind of like one of those movies that you could go into and just escape into it for a couple hours. So that one gets 4 stars. And then the last movie I watched this month, that was a first time watch, was a bit of a disappointment. And that is It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Now, I know a lot of people have said, and I should have listened to them, that you should watch the documentary and not this one. And I should just listen to that. But it had Tom Hanks, like, he was in the movie, and I will watch almost anything that Tom Hanks is in. So I just ignored all those people and veered left. And I was really disappointed. For one thing, it's told in such a weird way. Like, I get that they were trying to bring in aspects of the actual Mr. Rogers show with like the train and the city and all that. I just don't think it was necessary, and it made it a little bit weird. It was really boring because of all of that. And it was less about Mr. Rogers than about the journalist who wrote the article about Mr. Rogers. So I was really disappointed because, you think he's going one direction, and then it veered left and went the other direction, which it shouldn't have gone in the first place because it's supposed to be about Mr. Rogers. So, really weird storytelling, really bad direction, a really poor direction it went in. I did love Tom Hanks in this. I will say that I felt like he did a good Mr. Rogers. Whether you agree with me or not, I am going to hold on to that opinion because I really just think that Tom Hanks, he even seemed to have the essence of what he looked like, and all that was great. I will at some point watch the documentary once this movie has kind of left my brain. So this one gets 2.5 stars. I do feel like that was generous. It should have gone a 2 to 1.5 star. But again, Tom Hanks. So those are all the things that I've watched. It should be no surprise that in each month, the redundant number of my things I watch will be rewatches. I'm just that kind of person. And now onto the things that I've read this month. I had 2 DNFs, so we're going to talk about those first, and I'll talk about the one that I do not have with me, and that is The Silent Patient by Alex M. I do not know how to pronounce his last name. I am not even going to try. And this one is about, what's her name? Anne? Well, anyways, years ago, she shot and killed her husband several times straight in the face and never talks about him again. And years later, this psychotherapist named Theo Faber decides that he really wants to work with her, and he finds a way to weasel his way in, and he kind of goes down a road of obsession with trying to figure out what in the world happened and why won't she talk. So I'll tell you right now, I did do a stupid and look ahead in the book, and I thought I had gotten the twist right, and that it was not the kind of twist I was caring for, and so I was like, I'm not wanting to read it. And mom, oh, by the way, I was reading this along with my mom, and I was telling her some of the reasons why I wasn't really liking it, and she kind of agreed. So we decided to just kind of skip towards the end and see what actually happened at the end. And dude, I wish I had just read the book in some ways. Part of me wishes this, because that twist, I was only half right about the twist. And if I had just finished it, maybe I wouldn't have felt like it was a good enough payoff. But I have heard people say that the middle is a slog to get through, and I was already getting bored, and we were only 50 pages in. So here's the thing. Theo Faber is a drama king. He thinks his life is a Greek tragedy, and it made me hard eye roll throughout. Every time I would see anything Greek, I would hard eye roll, because no one's life is a Greek tragedy. No one's life gets that tragic. We all have hard times in our lives, and yes, a lot of people have an abusive childhood, but we don't need to be comparing ourselves to Greek tragedy here. And I get that. I think that the author was meant for him to seem like that, because he's not a reliable narrator. Nope. But I didn't care for the drama, and I feel like that was the author more than the character, just trying to insert drama when your book is boring. And when you add that kind of drama into it, it's not really drama. It's just him dramatizing his own life. So hard eye roll, boring, bland writing, and the ending, although when I realized what it was whoa. And thinking about it, I don't know. I'm still on the fence of maybe I should have read it, maybe I should have not. I will be trying this book again, because it's kind of pointless too. But maybe I will pick something else if I am. And I will try to remember not to ever look ahead when it comes to a mystery thriller book. It ruins everything. Will I follow through? Who knows? The next book I DNF'd, and this one I think a lot of people will be, if anybody actually watches this and gets this far, will be disappointed in knowing that I DNF'd this, and that is The Poet X by Elizabeth Azevedo. I know everybody on BookTube loves this book, and I'm curious. Well, not curious. I understand why people like this book. I get it, but I am not a huge fan of YA, and I felt like this turned into the predictable, typical YA that I see people talking about, and I also just like, I know that people are liking this because there's a lot of representation in this book. It's not the predictable white protagonist narrative going on, and yes, that was what drew me to this book, knowing that. But also, it's not as good as people were making it out to be. I'm sorry. I got 50% into this book, so I got quite a ways in, which is not that hard when it's written in verse. So this is about, I think she's like 15 to 16 years old, Sierra Mara, who lives in Harlem. She loves writing poetry. She wants to become a part of a slam poetry club, and at least it's supposed to seem like it's supposed to be about that. The synopsis makes it seem like that. But I got 50% in, and we barely were talking about the slam poetry club. Like, it's in the shadow, but the whole, oh my gosh, I'm in love with a guy, got the main, yeah, it's the main story plot, really. I skimmed through the rest of the book just to see if, like, yeah, she does go in, the slam poetry club talked about, of course, like I said, it was there, just wasn't the main thrust of the story, but I do think that the romance did take over 100%. I also think that she talks a lot about different issues, which they are all important: misogyny, sexism, body image issues, all that talked about. But I feel like religion, but other than the religion, I feel like a lot of these issues are just dropped and never handled. Like, she brings it up and then never really deals with these issues, and that could be because of it being written in verse. I do think that it being written in verse is a detriment to it, and I did find it problematic that she goes on and on about the issue, and she seems to understand that it is an issue that guys are objectifying her and ogling her, and then she turns around and basically does the same thing. So there's a bit of problematic thing going on there. But the real main thing is that this book is boring to me. I didn't feel like anything was happening. I got 50% into this book, and it just felt like nothing. So I DNF'd it. And I'm sorry if that hurt your feelings. I know how that feels, but I just couldn't deal. And then the last thing that I finished this month is March, Book 1 and Book 2 by John Lewis, Andrew Aiden, and Nathan Powell. And oh my goodness, I did think I was going to go a little bit faster through these, but especially the second one, it's just so much going on. This is his graphic memoir, if I did not mention this. This is kind of what the art looks like. I don't know if you can see that very well. Both of these get 5 stars. I definitely think that the second one is better than the first one. Maybe that's just because there's a lot more going on here, whereas this is more of an introduction to the main thrust of what this story is about, which is his participation in the civil rights movement and what his part was in all of that. So this was very much hard-hitting. I also felt like there were so many freaking parallels between what was happening then and what is happening now. And it's kind of scary to think about because we really should be repeating our history, but history repeats itself, and it's awful, horrible, and kind of exhausting to think about. But it has to be thought about, it has to be talked about, and we have to keep reminding people that Black Lives Matter, and we cannot be silent on it. So, yes. There is that. And then I'm going to quickly talk about what I am currently reading and what am I added TBR. So I'm currently reading Girls Burn Brighter by Shoba. I shouldn't say what I can't pronounce, so that's the author's name. And these are about, I'm not really going to talk about what this is about because I don't have many minutes left to talk about this. So I am 200 pages into this. and it's okay. This is her debut novel, and it definitely reads like a debut novel. It's it's partially telling and overshowing, and yeah, a lot of issues there. Then Where the Cloud Does Sing, barely got into it, but love the writing. Then on between TBR, we have the third book of March. Very excited for that. And then two nonfictions, Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson and Me and White Supremacy by, I can't see the name of the author. So these are the two nonfictions. Very much looking forward to this one, just because it's been a book I've been wanting to read for ages. And I've been holding off on the movie just because I knew it was going to make me anxious. I don't like courtroom stories that much because they make me so anxious, seriously. And this one, I think the title says enough. So, yeah. Combat racism, change the world, and become a good ancestor. Yes. So I'm looking forward to this, and it's actually shorter than what I thought. Like, it doesn't look like, I thought it was going to be a pretty big book, but it's under 300 pages. So those are all the things that I have to talk about. I think I will have to split my videos when I talk about movies and books, because that took the whole slot of my time that I have just to talk about all of them, and I kind of rushed the ending. So we're going to split them up from now on. So until next time, thank you all so much for watching. I would love to hear your thoughts on anything that I talked about today and what you're watching and reading. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time.